Hello everybody and God bless. So I had a revelation while I was reading in the book of Jubilees, chapter 7, verse 20. It says, "And in the 28th Jubilee, Noah began to enjoin upon his sons the ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew. And he exhorted his sons to absorb righteousness and to cover the shame of their flesh, and to bless the Creator and honor father and mother and love their neighbor and guard their souls from fornication and uncleanness and all iniquity." So I have heard so many times from people that Jesus did away with the law, and I just posted like a whole Bible study on that. So if you want to go see it, go ahead. And then so many people keep on calling it Moses' law. And even in the Bible, the Pharisees and Sadducees kept on calling it Moses' law. So my question is, this is Noah teaching the ordinances, the commandments, and the judgments. And he's straight up quoting in his own words here. Well, actually, the person writing this, Moses is writing this. He wrote Jubilees, but God is telling Moses what's right. So God is saying this. And he's summing it up right here. And he's saying ordinances, commandments, judgments, honor thy father and mother, love thy neighbor, and guard thy soul from fornication and uncleanness. That's all 10 commandments right there. That quick sentence, right? So the thing that gets me is, why do people keep on calling it Moses' law? This is Noah. Moses was not even born yet. He wasn't even conceived yet. I don't even think his father was conceived yet. Okay? So it's obviously not Moses' law, and it didn't just come out of nowhere. I remember learning that growing up, that people believe that the 10 commandments were not given to his people until Moses. So before Moses, everybody was just living in all kinds of sins, and he just picked Noah just because Noah was the only one who just common sense didn't do that stuff. And I was like, that don't make any sense. You telling me all these years done passed and God didn't give his people law at all? No, that doesn't make any sense. So I was sitting at the table and I was talking to my mom and my sister, and I was like, "Mom, so remember a long time ago, you told me," because it was when I very first started cooking for the first time in a long time, so I didn't really know how to cook. So she taught me that when you put rice in the rice cooker and you take the rice out, if it's burnt at the bottom, do not scrape the bottom. If it's not burnt, then go ahead and scrape it up. I didn't know that, and I kept on forgetting it, and she kept on telling me. She kept telling me, and then eventually she goes, "Do you want me to write it down?" And I was like, "Yes, please write it down," because I can't. I keep on forgetting, because sometimes I remember she said, "Don't scrape the bottom," so I wouldn't scrape the bottom. And it was good rice that I was letting go to waste. And then I would scrape the bottom, and then it was bad rice that I was putting in with the good rice. So I just kept on forgetting what it was. So finally she writes it down for me. She didn't write it down because it was a new law. She wrote it down because I kept on forgetting and kept on not doing it. And then she finally wrote it down okay, there's no way you cannot get it this time, because I literally have it written down right here where you can see it. And I believe that's what God did, because he told them his law from the very beginning. I mean, think about it. If there wasn't a law in the beginning, then why is it recorded what Cain did to Abel as a sin? So, God is the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. His laws are forever from the beginning. Okay, there's some things that I think he had in place, but he just didn't tell the people because it wasn't ready at that time. For instance, Cain and Seth, they both married their sisters, and that's recorded in Jubilees. But we know that later on, in years later past, God says, "Okay, now this is against me. Do not do this anymore." And he I don't think he was adding that law. I think he just didn't tell them at that time, because obviously they needed to multiply and they needed to marry their sisters and stuff like that. They needed to do that, right? So I believe that there's some laws that God just doesn't tell us, because remember in the New Testament, it does say that how there are sins that, but since we don't know them, it's not a sin, right? So back then, when they didn't know that they're not supposed to intermarry with their sister, then they didn't do that, right? But then God said, okay, now I'm telling you, now you know, now do not do this anymore. So that's why it's okay. That's why it's not okay for us to do that anymore. So, just don't call it Moses' law. It's not Moses' law. It's God's law. Okay? And God is the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. So, God bless you all. Have a nice one.